Oh, blessings on the goddess for this unfolding. Just delighted to be here and get to drop in and talk all things awakening and liberation. I just love to geek out on that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited as well. I remember finding your podcast and like knowing you as a yoga teacher, but I was like, wait a second, like there's so much more in your world that you're offering, and like let me dive headfirst into it. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if we could be on a conversation live together like this. So yes, very grateful to have you here. And let's celebrate before we drop into our conversation with a little dance. It's a tradition over here on my Friday IG Live. So, music
Okay.
on and invite you to drop
I'm
into
going to
body.
stay seated because I've got no space behind me and do the old seated dance.
You cut out. What did you say?
I said, I'm just going to stay seated because otherwise I'll disappear and you'll get a nice close up of my crotch. Great way to start.
Hello, who's joining us. Welcome to Join the Dance. Drop in the body a little bit. Chatting. All right. Keep going forever, I'm sure.
Oh, what a great way to start.
Right?
Love it. Talk about embodied liberation. There we go. There we go. Oh my God.
Yes, we don't just speak about it over here at Evolving Consciousness. So let's get into it. For those watching, either live on the replay, just notice what's coming up for you as we dance, as we talk, what sensations are there, what thoughts are arising, emotions, beliefs. We're here to notice and become aware of it all. So, Kara-Leah, I'd love to invite you to talk a bit about your journey through your awakening process, your perspective, and what's brought you to this work.
Okay. Just feeling into where to begin. You know, it's an interesting thing with this story of me. You know, like this is a story I've been sharing for a long time. My memoir, Sex, Drugs, and Yoga, is the story as it appeared in 2018, right? Because I know if I was to share that story now, it would be very different, right? Because this is the interesting thing about doing this work is that we literally, the past changes, our perspective of the past changes. So I'm just aware of like not going into rote, not going into, oh yeah, this is the story, da 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 da. So that's why I was pausing to take a little time. And also to feel into what is relevant for your audience in particular. Okay, so I've always questioned the nature of reality, right from being, you know, a child, a teenager. It was always there, questioning, inquiring, like, but what, you know, this sense of like things not lining up, like my perception or embodied felt sense didn't make sense in terms of what I was being told or what was going on. You know, and I was always passionate about dance. Oh my God, flash dance awoke something in me when I was like, I think I watched it when I was 8 or maybe 10 years old. I'm a child of the 80s, born in 75. Big fan of Madonna, you know, so dance was a thing. And when I went overseas when I was 21, I discovered the wonderful world of recreational drug taking, ecstasy on London dance floors. Like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to like connect with people and talk and da 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 da. because I was completely disassociated, totally in my head, absolutely rigid, a complete control freak, and
Body.
unaware of any of that. Yeah, totally unaware of any of it.
Yeah.
So there I was dancing and taking all kinds of, recreational drugs and having, sex, incredible sex that started to really open things up, all of which led to an awakening / psychosis. I was already practicing yoga, which I'd started as a way to deal with back issues. I had a spinal fusion when I was 16. I've quite likely got degenerative disc disease, like all the things. That awakening / psychosis when I was 29 at the time felt like the worst thing. It was hell.
Yeah.
It was hell. It was hell. And I was living in Canada at the time, in Whistler, and had to go back to New Zealand. Did not want to go back to New Zealand. Like, oh my God, I had to go back and face my family of origin and all the things and be, yeah. And I was there for 20 years, right? And doing the work. And it was like when I went through the awakening, there was, I was, holy shit, this is what life is. There was full like dissolving of the separate sense of self and emerging with the field. And then when I woke up in the psych ward, I was right back in conditioned mind. And the difference felt like heaven and hell.
Yeah.
And so there was this palpable sense of like, now I have to do the liberation work, the challenging work, the deep diving, the samskara, devouring, digesting, and dissolving, in order to open to what I know is truth.
Yes.
And so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, because what else is there to do? Like if you had directly experienced heaven on earth, would you not do everything in your power to allow yourself to drop into it, recognizing it is not a place, it is always here? Yeah. And it is only our perceptual mind, conditioned mind, that separates us out from what is,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I did not know this was your story. And like, so excited to have you here to have this conversation right now, because there are so many points of resonance between our journeys of awakening. And as you said, when you're in that space of like psychosis, it's like nobody's ever experienced this before. And the more and more I lean into sharing my experience also of psychosis, psych ward, I was in Costa Rica at the time, the more I'm like, wait a minute, this is something that so many people experience, and how can we bring conversation forward in a way where, like you said at the beginning, our perception shifted on the past to speak from an empowered place, to speak to the process of liberation that follows the big expansion, how to integrate into the day-to-day life, into how you communicate with people, into how you form relationships with yourself, with your family, with your friends, with your clients, with how you serve people. It's just, absolutely what you said. We've experienced hell and heaven. It's like, okay, how do I bring these together to live life from a place of it's all happening, but we get to choose our level of perception, our anchor of consciousness. I like to say, in my world of evolving consciousness, we anchor into the embodiment of unconditional love, which allows every experience to move through us with ease, grace, and flow. And yes, okay. I'm excited.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So from that space of, okay, also I had a lot of experiences with recreational drugs in university, and my big thing was I started on my journey with yoga and with just caring for my health and wellness, and then I decided to take this big leap to Costa Rica and ended up attending an ayahuasca ceremony, really, or 4 ayahuasca ceremonies back to back to back, and it just completely like shot me open, and I was in this like big expansion of like, but fell into the like love and light spirituality of it all, and then that was not sustainable, obviously. So that's when the big psychosis experience happened, psych ward, and then
Yeah.
what ensued afterwards. I also had to go back to Canada. My dad escorted me home on a plane, and
Mm,
oh no.
yeah.
Interesting there too is that I was journaling on my drive home from the airport of all of the things that I was going to do with this experience. And from moving back to Canada, I was in my like small hometown in New Brunswick, and I was like, I am going to move to Squamish, and then I'm going to move to Mexico, and we're coming to you live from my home in Mexico right now. So, if
Yeah.
you've had an experience of meeting the like darkest demons of the hellscape, and this is your shining beacon of light to keep
Yeah.
going because all comes full circle eventually.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And it's just learning how to meet and love and embrace and dance with the demons, you know? Like, yeah, that's the journey. It's like increasing your capacity to meet and be with more and more intense sensation, you know?
mhm. I'd love to hear about your process with that of expanding capacity because that's a big cornerstone of
Mm.
the do as well. So I'm curious to hear how that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I began doing yoga sort of regularly when I was living in Whistler, it was like Lululemon had just opened up and Neo Alpine Bikram had just opened up and there was a studio in town. It was like this surgence of yoga. You know, this is like we're talking this is 1999, 2000,
Oh,
right? So it was just like,
yeah.
yeah, it was really exciting. And what I noticed was I'd go to Bikram and I'd hit dancer's pose and I would just start bawling my eyes out and I would cry for the rest of class. And that happened pretty much every time. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? You know? Um, and then awakening, that all happened, psychosis in 2004. When I came back to New Zealand, I just knew that I needed to show up for yoga, you know, consistently and regularly. And it was hard because often there was so much resistance to getting on the mat.
Yeah.
And what I began to notice was that, and this was around, so I was practicing, and around 2006, I got asked to teach. I began to teach from my home practice. And the moment I started teaching, because I didn't train, right? I was like, whoa, integrity. I'm like, okay, if I am teaching yoga, I must show up to my home
Yeah.
practice. And we're not talking to a DVD or YouTube. No, like my home practice, just me, myself, and I on the mat. I must show up to my home practice every single day, regardless, because that is where I teach from. And when that began to happen, what it meant was on those days when I had strong resistance to practicing, I still had to practice. And I started to notice that on the days when there was strong resistance, that was when I would hit the mat and then the tears would come.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then there was inevitably relief afterwards. So I began to almost get excited when there was resistance because I'd know I'll get on my mat and I'll be able to digest something that's arising. And so that process was starting to unfold. And I just kept leaning into it and leaning into it. And I started to do charter practice in 2010, semi-regularly, committed in 2015 to daily. But it wasn't until I discovered the work of Christopher Wallace around 2018 when I discovered samskara theory, right? And samskara theory is, it's related to Shakta Upaya, which you mentioned in my intro. So Shakta Upaya is one of the skillful means of liberation. There's three plus one. The individual means, the empowered means, and the divine means, right? The individual means is when we're working directly with the body, with our practices. The empowered means is Shakta Upaya, where we're beginning to work directly with the mental, emotional body and the energetic body. So in essence, what we're starting to do is digest samskaras, unresolved emotional patterns in the system, which might be called trauma through a Western medical lens, and vikalpas or limiting beliefs. So when I discovered the work of Christopher Wallace, it was like now I was like, oh my God, a framework
Mm-hmm.
for what has spontaneously been unfolding for like the last 10 years or so. And so once I had the framework, I was able to really dive in and lean in and have even more understanding of what was already happening in the system and the body. so that's how I sort of leaned in. And in terms of how did I build my capacity, right? So it was literally showing up to embodiment practice consistently over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the second really critical piece was orientating to awareness, right? Beginning to, this is the awakening process. Awakening is simply a shift in identity. Most humans are identified with the apparent individual sense of self, the story of me, right? And so when we begin to awaken, there is a recognition, a knowingness that what one is simply awareness, right? Awareness or essence, nature. And when that begins to happen, when we orientate to awareness, then all the phenomena of existence, right? The thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, right? Everything that comes and goes, everything that is temporary, everything that is a expression of Shakti, right? Awareness, Shiva, expressions of Shakti is all the phenomena. We are no longer identified with it, nor are we possessed by it, which gives us the capacity to be able to fully meet it, devour, digest, and dissolve it. And when we don't have that yet, if there's suddenly really intense fear in the system, we'll be identified with it, we'll be scared of it, we won't want to meet it. All of our unconscious patterns, the way the psyche seeks to keep us safe and avoid feeling those things will click in, and we won't be able to be present with the sensation arising within the awareness that we are.
Yeah.
So those pieces, right? Training more and more ability to orientate to awareness, which really began to drop in around 2017, 2018, after 3 years of daily practice of Uchara. And just a recognition and understanding from a theoretical or philosophical rather than, it's not theory, it's fucking practice. From a philosophical perspective, knowing and understanding, oh, this is Shakti Upaya. This is the same. The yogis understand this. This is the liberation. They've been talking about it. Oh, I just have to like follow along. And thank you so much to Abhinavagupta and Shamaraja and all these incredible yogis who wrote all this down because they were directly experiencing it 1,000 years ago or so. You know, like none of this is new. This is old. This is tradition. This is lineage. This is the path of being a human being. This is being human and awakening to what we really are.
Yeah, I love that part of like the perspective of the expanded capacity is recognizing that those big feelings that you have are not actually so big when you reorient to awareness rather than identify with the phenomena, like you said.
Yeah, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. If you know yourself as awareness, everything just gets so much easier. And it's a practice. It's a practice. There's a certain point, like there's a schematic in Tantra, which is the 9 stages, sometimes the 12 stages of awakening, right? And everyone's in stage 1 until blah, 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 blah. And stage 7 is this surrender, grace, into abiding awakeness, which simply means that you just know yourself as awareness, and there is no more forgetting, there's no more identification with the story of me, etc. But before that there's flashes, there's moments, right? And most of us experience those moments where we are so like immersed in awareness of what is unfolding, the beautiful sunset, the this or the that, and it's like we forget ourselves, right? And it's like, whoa, we are there. And so what we're doing with practice is we're simply invoking and practicing orientating to awareness so that it can start to drop in more and more in day-to-day life, so that eventually it's a default state. And then one day, perhaps, maybe with the grace of the goddess, we slide into abiding awakeness, and there is no more returning. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about that stage when the glimpses are happening, and what experiences, you mentioned a few like the sunset, but what experiences do you see maybe if with the client with that trigger those like
yeah. Okay, so yeah, the glimpses what I suggest for practitioners and students is start to just be really curious about what is unfolding, right? There's ways to cue. Like when I'm teaching a yoga class, the way I am cueing is from that place of orientation to awareness, and I cue that in how I speak to the student's experience, because I'm not speaking from a place of identification with the individual sense of self, right? So think simple things like orientate to awareness, or drop into the awareness that you are, not attuned to your awareness, because as soon as you say attune to your awareness, you've made awareness an object of the apparent separate sense of self. So you have created a separation between, subject and object, and so you're perpetrating the paradigm of separation of individual sense of self, you see. And so so this is part of what I'm doing as a teacher, is just speaking from orientation to awareness and inviting people to drop into it. And it's not that difficult. Like even right now, as you and I are speaking, like, and people are listening and people are watching, right? If you just drop into awareness of your breath, right? Just become really aware of the sensation of your breath. And as you're becoming aware of the sensation of your breath, see if you can be aware of awareness itself. Which is aware. Be aware of awareness as you're aware of the sensation of breath. And as you're doing that, there might be thoughts that move through the mind. There might be feelings or sensations, but staying orientated to that awareness that you are. Coming through from Mexico, and they're so beautiful, right? And this is what begins to unfold, is that when we know ourselves as awareness, all the phenomena, all of the phenomena, the sounds and the smells and all of it is within what we are, right? So the sound is not outside of me, because what I am is awareness, and the entire universe is inside that, and just the dissolving of that separate sense of self. So to start to notice, to start to drop into that in practice and notice that. And then I'm a big fan of like this formal practice, and then what I call integrated practice. So when you're boiling the jug, just become aware of your breath, become aware of the sound of the jug, become aware of, and cultivate, right? It's a cultivation of awareness in that moment. When you sit down in the toilet, I mean, how often do you go pee? Beautiful opportunity. Instead of thinking or being on your phone, I noticed my teenager stays on his phone. I'm just like, what? Right? So sit down the toilet and just drop in, make it a practice, right? Just drop in and be really aware of your breath, your body, aware of the sensation of urine leaving the system. Just be really aware of, rather than thinking about reality, thinking about what is happening, right? And this is how you can have your formal practice, your integrated practice, and start to cultivate little moments throughout your day. And then when one naturally unfolds, when all of a sudden you're standing there at the grocery line and all of a sudden you realize, orientated to awareness, not I am orientated to awareness, but just orientation to awareness, right? And just savor it.
Yes.
And over time, those little moments become more frequent, they become longer. And there's that point, like for me, it was around 2017, 2018, it was like default. And it was really palpable when there was the forgetting, and because it can feel a bit like going from heaven to hell, and the forgetting and the coming back into identification with the apparent separate sense of self. And that still happens sometimes. Like I'm not in abiding awareness. That hasn't unfolded yet. It's still just unfolding.
Yeah. the duality that we're living into. It's like being able to orient to awareness, and then there's moments where we get pulled out of it, and that's okay too. No, we're
Yeah.
not here to be these like monks meditating on the mountain. Something that I love to bring into the work that I do with clients is that like taking those little micro moments when you're walking from your car to your kitchen to put your groceries away. Slow it down. Look around. Feel your feet on the breeze. Feel the breeze. And really just get into the body in those small moments when you could be thinking about like XYZ things that are to come, or like XYZ things that just happened. And over time, it's like that lived experience of continuing to come back, dropping into the body to be aware of all of the phenomena that are moving through. And the gift of that is we get to make conscious choices rather than being driven by these unconscious beliefs and samskaras that exist from whatever experiences we've had. And so I want to shift into talking now about how that lends to the process of embodying desire. And I know you have a whole program of desire. Talk to that a little bit now. How those
What do you want to know?
What do I want to know about embodying desire? What is a process that you use with yourself or guide clients through to actually identify desire and then shift from that identification place into the this is how I'm moving forward in life place?
So even as I'm talking to you right now, what I'm beginning to do, and you're welcome to join me on watching this, is I'm just gently circling the tailbone, like kind of stirring the pot a little. And the movement can be physically, whatever, whether it's larger, whether it's smaller, but there's also a sense of like energetically, I don't know, it's like as soon as I start doing that, I can feel myself just starting to become alive and get turned on by life itself. And I can feel that the energetics, right? It's like the awakening, the alivening right at the base of Sushumna, of energy, of Shakti, Kundalini Shakti, the goddess herself, right? Because desire is ultimately the goddess herself. And, the teaching in Tantra is that all desire is ultimately a longing to merge with the divine, right? And so we often, when we feel desire, it's often associated with an object, right? That guy is really hot. He's turning me on, right? But the teaching around it starts to be, what if life itself was your lover? What if you could just really feel the inherent aliveness, vibrancy, turn on of life itself? And it's not my desire then, it's going through desire. And from that place, right, we can sense or see or feel attraction to humans, to other people, or to places, or to experiences, right? And that is a thing. It's like the attraction. And then there's a level of discernment. So you're attracted by what you're turned on by. If your friend reaches out and says, hey, you want to come to this? And you're like, see, this is the thing. Life is always, always happening for us. And we will be attracted to the things that are going to liberate us. So attraction itself, being able to discern, like particularly, for myself as a woman, identify primarily, as a straight woman. And if I'm attracted to a man, one of the things I've learned to start to feel into is to recognize that attraction might not necessarily mean that this is a sexual connection or even a romantic connection. That attraction might mean that there is something to discover, that there is something to unfold, that there is a gift to exchange, or there is karma that can be resolved here, right? And if I am attached to or grasping for a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship, and I'm not being discerning, then sometimes that can mean that karmic resolution, rather than being a bare sea and work folding in the moment, can lead to a 3.5-year chaotic relationship. Right? Yeah. And
Yes.
so learning to work desire is like the most extraordinary force in the universe. It's a force of creation. Like when Shiva was sitting on the mountain all by himself doing his thing in his stillness, as the legend goes, he kind of opens his eyes and goes, yeah, a little bit bored, think I need a bit of fun. And then Shakti, energy, manifestation, the universe is born from Shiva's desire to experience is the thing that will lead us to liberation, when we know how to take the ride, when we recognize what is happening, when we're no longer immersing in the addictiveness of it all and the intensity of it all and the drama of it all, and we can totally 100% been immersed in it for 4 weeks, because we're just closing out the 4-week container right now, and it's been it's been juicy.
Yeah. Desire is something that I work with within my programs in a way of getting clear on what it is that your intention for the creative process and how to engage with that evolution consciously. And so I work with asking people a series of questions and then observing the awareness of what phenomena are arising within that, and then how can we use the body to meet both the desire that is conscious for what we want to create, and then the desire that's unconscious, that's arising from that place of Kara, and bring those two into union. And so what I'm doing is not necessarily under the umbrella of yoga, however, everything is technically under the umbrella of yoga. And so I love to bring in people into this space to speak to the different perspectives of how we can approach this work of being in our process of awakening.
Yeah. I mean, most of us are highly conditioned around desire and around sexual energy. And, this is why the work of Neo-Tantra or conscious sexuality is so critical and so needed and so important, and it can be its own pitfall and its own obstacle, as anything can be on the path. But being able to dissolve the conditioning that one has around desire and allow yourself to open to being turned on by life itself, then your compass becomes so much stronger. It's just like, follow the excitement breadcrumb trail. What turns you on? Well, I'm meant to do this and I should do that, and da-da-da, and write-it-da, and well, maybe if you actually open to joy and desire and let that lead you, take you. And that reveals our aversion. So, anything on the path, particularly if you know how to navigate, right?
Yeah. I love that you speak to the conditioning around sexuality. It's something that I'm just starting to do and feels a little edgy for me still. But when you were talking about expanding capacity, I was thinking about how sexual experience has been a massive driver in my ability to expand capacity and being in states of orgasmic bliss. When I first started to really understand how my body worked in that space, there would be like a holding of my breath and like like this is way too intense and like a backing
Yeah.
off of it. And slowly, the more I learned how to use my voice in those spaces, I was able to actually open to feeling more of that orgasmic, like mind shattering, separate self, like merging into awareness space. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about maybe your process with that and like how you guide people that you work with into that space of this is something that is on the buffet table of life to experience,
Mm,
moving away from the conditioning that's put on sexuality, especially for women.
yeah. I don't often work directly with sexuality in any of the stuff that I do. Um, if it comes up organically, when I'm working with a client, I will absolutely, address it from the liberation and awakening perspective. Um, but it hasn't really come up. I mean, I can talk to my own journey with it for sure. Um, mm, yeah, what's relevant here? When I was 2015, I went to my first festival in New Zealand. Like, so I had my awakening that initially at Shambhala
Mm.
in Nelson, right, in 2004. First ever festival. I went with my fiance and my best friend, and had a massive awakening, and it was a very challenging time emotionally, etc., and went into the psychosis. So back in New Zealand, I was scared of going to festivals, and it wasn't until 11 years later when this very, oh my God, this very sexy man who, interesting enough, reminded me a lot of my ex-fiance, very sexy man was going to a festival, and I was like, oh, if he's going to be there, I am so going. And so I love that desire. It pulls us along on the path. Like when I reflect on my life and the things I've done for men, for the intensity, it's like, oh, it's taken me forward. It's led me forward. So I go, and him and I start connecting, and we're standing on a lookout. But it was very apparent to me in this moment, and this is why I'd progressed from where I was in my 20s. It was very apparent to me that he was only in the moment with it. Whereas it was apparent to me, I could feel that I really wanted something more enduring and long lasting. And in that moment, I'm so proud of myself. I didn't abandon my own desire. I owned my desire for sexual intimacy within committed relations. And we're literally standing like this close, and my body's so turned on, he's so hot, and the sun is setting, right? And I'm looking, I'm like, I cannot do this because our visions, our desires are not aligned. And it was like this vow of brahmacharya, that I was no longer going to be a slave or betray myself, betray truth, however you frame it, for the intoxicating desire, delight. And I fell off the wagon a couple of times, where I'd be like, I could sense a man wasn't into, the romantic, I'd be like, fuck it, I'm gonna just go for it. But what was interesting then was that I was really owning it for myself. I wasn't deluding or pretending in terms of what he wanted. So I very much walked the path of brahmacharya for the last, 10 years, which has meant for me that I retain my sexual energy. I've been retaining it 100%, like not even any self pleasure, unless I'm specifically doing a sex magic ritual. So no self pleasure, and full containment unless I'm in a committed relationship, in which case, even then, what I noticed when I was in, I've been in 2 relationships over that 10-year period. Even then, there was the sense of like not stepping into sexual intimacy for the hell of it. Like,
Right.
interesting phrase, eh? For the hell of it. It was only coming in when it was a genuine expression of truth, and that was a really interesting thing to navigate. And just noticing that, it was extraordinary. And then coming back to Canada, where I was in my 20s, when I was completely no, there's no brahmacharya. and my conditioning and my karma and so coming back here, I've been exploring a little, and I actually decided, I made the choice to take a lover where I knew I was stepping into sexual intimacy with someone who we're not in a committed, let's create a life together relationship. And that felt aligned. It felt really aligned. And so I stepped into a lover. This is like where love is. We're not creating a long-term relationship. My heart was fully open. And what I noticed in that was that it burned through very quickly, like in one moon cycle. And things were revealed and things unfolded and things happened. And again, I saw where my alignment was. And I was like, okay, now I'm closing this off because of, a different kind of alignment that presented itself. So it feels now that the path for me of brahmacharya has become more nuanced, more nuanced. And so it is, Brahma means God, like the divine, and charya means to walk with, right? So it is the surrender of sexuality to the path of the divine, right? And like I say, it is one of the most intoxicating things that can pull us into the grasping, clinging, oh, it's so fun, it's so amazing. It's been a really strong path of teaching for me. And containment, like it teaches containment, and life is your lover. Literally, I'll share one more thing because it just makes me laugh. It's in my memoir, this story. Amazing friend of mine, Pete Longworth. He's incredible. It was so juicy. I just got so turned on doing the shoot, and then had to drive. We were on our way to Wanderlust. It was presenting at Wanderlust. Both of us were. And I literally went into spontaneous, like energetic orgasm whilst driving the car, because life had just turned me on so much, because life is your lover. And because when you work with containment,
Yeah.
So there's a little bit for you.
Yeah, I've had like my own like stints of I haven't ever really like called it brahmacharya. I've always called it like celibacy. But I had that like the temptation that gave in, and I didn't have that discernment now. So it's interesting then. Now I do. I didn't have that then.
Yeah.
Just hear that reflection of like sometimes this pull of attraction isn't about the sexuality. It's actually about like, okay, this person has unique energy experiences to share with me that is going to unlock something new. And I'm like thinking of these experiences like, oh, I only known that then. But
Right.
it's all
Right.
learning
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
We only know what we know when we know it.
well, of thinking of like the experience where I came out of this like path of celibacy and like what I learned in those and how like crazy and dramatic it was because it was meant to be this like um, unfolding of my awakening process. So curious now, moving a little bit from desire into building a life intention anchored in that creator consciousness, and we'll kind of start to close it off here. And you touched on this and talking about like, this is my choice to contain this life force, and how trying to formulate a question here, but like when you're in that space, it's like, how? Well, you just make the choice. But then when we're guiding other people to come into this space of awareness of how to build life with intention rather than just kind of being pulled by these forces of attraction. What does that look like? What does it entail from a teacher perspective or from a coach perspective?
Yeah. And when I work with people, I'm very much working with what is present, what is in the field, what is the relational dynamic. And the desire, the will of the person is what I'm responding to. And so with brahmacharya, it wasn't even like I made a choice in that moment. It was like it made me. It was like just what unfolded. And this is the interesting thing too. When there's a sense of identity, there's a sense that we are making a choice.
Ooh.
Really, life is just happening through us. Life is just happening through us. Life is just happening through us. It's just happening, you know? And so if I'm working with someone and they're thinking about or trying to figure out or trying to decide something, what I'll often do is just say, what would it feel like to orientate to brahmacharya? Recognizing, the definition I give it is not necessarily celibacy, but alignment, sexuality aligning with the divine, right? It's surrendering. It's so much surrendering. But I'll just be like, what would it feel like, for example, to contain your sexual energy? Or what would it feel like to do 40 days of celibacy? What would it feel like to be completing 40 days of celibacy? And I'll invite the person to just drop in and feel, imagine what that would feel like. And when we do that, when we simply drop into the embodied sense of what it is, what would it feel like? Because time doesn't exist, right? What would it feel like? Then things reveal themselves. Things reveal themselves. What would it feel like? What do you notice? What is present? What is? Let's meet that. Mind, it's a fear, it's a defense mechanisms, it's a nervous system response, etc. And again, it's just acknowledging those, naming those, and inviting.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, decisions are no longer a thing when there's they just drop away. There's just just what happens.
Totally. I was having a conversation with my partner yesterday where he was asking me, like, how did you decide to work with this person? I have a few collaborations that are on the way. And I'm like, kind of perplexed by the question. I was like, I didn't. It's just what's happening. Like, I don't know. I could psychoanalyze it for you if you want me to, but I don't feel like that would, either of us. It's just like, that's here now, and so that's what I'm doing. It's more of like a responsiveness of like saying yes to the energy that's there. There's the other way of being in like this decision maker mode is like, okay, everything that comes in, you're then like filtering it through all of these perceptual schemas, whereas when we're oriented to awareness, it's like
there's still
you get to show up.
It's still it's still there. I mean, it could be like a more and another, because he's engaging you in conversation, right? And so if I was to ask, I would probably be like, what lights you up? There's gonna be that shared connection, and I get to find out, and you get to explore, and it's not about the decision. It's like, what lights you up?
Some comments too that it's not working. I didn't catch that last bit of what you said.
It's such a good question to ask, instead of like, oh, what do you do? Just saying that, like, in terms of, how to connect with someone, instead of asking, what do you do? It can be like, oh, what lights you up about life? What lights you up,
Mm-hmm.
And so your partner asking that, he's wanting to connect, he's wanting to find out, instead of like, oh, why did you decide to work with those people? It could be what lights you up about those people.
Yeah, that's what I shifted the conversation to. It was just that
Yeah.
I felt a point of resonance,
Yeah.
and I felt like excited about what they were sharing, and how they were speaking and how I felt in their presence. And I like led with that, and to get curious about what else is there. Like, what are we learning from each other? What are we creating together?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
So, what else wants to be said? I feel like we've covered a lot. Had
Uh-huh.
some really juicy stories and teachings, and bring it all together. And I think it's a good point to start to close it out. But before I let you go, I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you want to share about how people can work with you, how people can follow your work, any upcoming events or offers, how to stay connected.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Instagram is where I hang out. I don't really do Facebook, and I am on YouTube. So what I'm really excited about leaning into is I'm about to start offering the Yogis Apprenticeship, where I've done a lot of small group mentoring and absolutely freaking love it, because I work with the collective field,
Mm,
right? Intentionality in the collective field allows people to just step into the field and stuff starts to move. And I realized that the people that light me up the most to work with are yoga teachers. And I recognize that, the education or the training that yoga teachers receive is often missing that direct contact with a teacher, a mentor who can support the actual awakening and liberation. Not necessarily about, how to teach Warrior 2. It's more about working in the relational field and how to liberate, how to bring your yoga teaching itself. And so this offering, which will be to work intimately with yoga teachers and really uh, mm, of yoga teaching out there in the world and into liberation and awakening as students as far as we have gone. So as teachers, then for myself, I see it, it's my obligation, it's my duty to walk this path moment by moment every single day, to show up to practice, to do the work so that I can be that for my students, right? So I really want to work with other teachers who feel that call, who feel that desire, who want to take it further, who are like, I want to liberate so I can support the liberation of my students. And there's such a good foundation out there of yoga, right? And now what happens if we collectively really bring it into the liberation space? Oh my God, like, I just get so like
yeah.
yeah, because from that liberation space where we're aligned to love, truth, and the well-being of all, like, you imagine a world where 10% of the humans are operating from that.
Oh, I've lost you here.
Well-being of all, like the impact on the field is going to be massive. So that's kind of the mission I see. It's like, all right, let's go. Who wants in truth, love, and the well-being of all? Let's move from that space. Yeah. So that's the
The
mentors that are
audio
required.
goes.
What you need to like, so many things. I don't go into details, but like, I know.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm
I
trusting
hope.
that on the
But
recording,
it's really
because often the
interesting what's
recordings are
happening
actually
with the
asleep because they
connections
catch up,
here
you know?
because like
So,
I've been on calls
yeah.
this morning, last night, like it was completely fine. So there's something going on with I don't know, tech interference. But yeah, I caught the bits about your offers and what the moment that I heard the most and like the exciting, not most exciting, what am I trying to say here? The part that I heard was a part that I really want to comment on. So, you were talking about how this like yoga gets to move from a place of this is a practice we do in a studio on the mat to this like collective evolution of liberation, and to imagine this trend of yoga of like going to a yoga studio to come out of the yoga studio off the mat to be a trend in the collective experience of being in connection with each other, like
Yeah.
that is where I see the world going, and that is my like deepest desire, biggest vision, big dream. So I'm so excited to
Mm,
be weaving with others that have opened to receive this vision, and that's exactly what it is. Like it's not my vision, it's not my dream, and I always say that it is something
yeah,
moving through
totally.
me and asking me to respond. And when
Yeah.
I show up in response to that, that, mm, that like pulse of life, really, that is when life becomes so much more alive, where the experience of being is just so amplified and like amplified in all of the senses, right? Like the experience of moving here and following this like this pulse and this thread was like terrifying. I was like, what do you mean I have to leave my whole community and I need to like leave my like stable like yoga studio management job and all of that for like I was actually in like denial of it for a while, and I just came to a point where I was like, I can't deny this anymore. And
Yeah.
so there's, as much as it is like amplified in the joy and the bliss and everything, it also amplifies everything.
Yeah.
And so there's the excitement and there is the challenge, and it's all beautiful. And I think that um, the great part of getting to connect with others that are open to this is that it that sense of self dissolving becomes even more tangible rather than just this philosophy or this teaching, this tradition. It becomes this reflection in our lived experience. And so thank you so
Yeah.
much for showing up to the call
Mm,
and all of
mm,
the callings.
mm. Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for sharing that. Like as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, life is calling us to live from love. Life is calling us to live from love, from truth, and for the well-being of all. Yeah. Can you hear the call? And you obviously hear it. I obviously hear it, right? How many humans around the planet are hearing that now? And if you are hearing that and you're like, I didn't know, yeah, trust it, lean in and begin to live from love and from truth and for the well-being of all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you, Chenisse.
thank you, Kara-Leah. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
was it there? Audio video is catching up again. All right, we're back. I think you were just thanking the audience. And so I also want to say thank you to audience for being here. If you have any questions for either of us, you can drop them in the comments of the replay. Take care.